The knock came at 2:17 a.m. 3 soft taps that somehow cut through the silence of my empty house like thunderclaps. I wasn't sleeping, hadn't really slept in months, but I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not her. When I opened the door, Sarah stood there in a faded nightgown, her eyes red-rimmed and vacant, clutching a photo album to her chest like a shield. "I can't hear the silence anymore," she whispered. "Please, can I just sit with someone who understands?" Before I continue this story that changed both our lives forever, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and trust me, you'll want to stay for what happens next in this journey of loss, unexpected connection, and finding light in the darkest places. I'd watched from my kitchen window the day they carried David's body out. Sarah had stood on her porch, perfectly still, as if movement might shatter her completely. I understood that stillness. I'd perfected it myself in the 15 months since I'd lost my wife to cancer. Neighbors brought casseroles and sympathy cards to Sarah's door for weeks. Then, as they always do, they stopped coming. That's when the real grief begins, not at the funeral, but in the ordinary Tuesday afternoons that follow, when the world keeps spinning while yours has stopped. Sarah and I had been neighbors for 7 years, but barely knew each other beyond polite waves and occasional small talk about the weather. David had been the friendly one, always offering to help with yard work or bringing over extra tomatoes from their garden. I'd kept to myself even before becoming a widower, and afterward, I'd practically disappeared into my house. But grief recognizes grief across distances, through walls, beyond words. That night, I made tea neither of us would drink. We sat in my living room, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock my wife had loved. Sarah opened the photo album but couldn't look at it. Instead, she told me about the silence in her house. "It's not just quiet," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's like a physical thing pressing against my ears. I turn on the TV, play music, even talk to myself, but nothing breaks it. David used to snore. God, how I hated that sound. Now I'd give anything to hear it again." I nodded, remembering how I'd slept with a recording of my wife's voice for months after she died. "The silence is worse at night," I said. "And in the morning," Sarah added. "And during dinner. And when something funny happens and you turn to tell them," I continued. "And you realize they're not there," she finished. That night began something neither of us expected. Not romance, we were both still married to ghosts, but a lifeline. Sarah went home at dawn, and I thought perhaps that would be the end of it. But the next evening I found myself on her porch with a container of soup I'd made too much of. The night after, she appeared at my door with a movie David had loved that she couldn't watch alone. We created a strange ritual in our grief. Sometimes we talked about them. David's passion for birdwatching, my wife Elena's terrible singing voice that she inflicted on everyone without shame. Other times we couldn't bear to speak their names and instead discussed books or politics or the neighbor's ugly new fence. We were careful with each other in a way the well-meaning but unbroken people in our lives couldn't be. 3 months after that first night, Sarah called me in a panic. "I can't find it," she sobbed into the phone. "I've looked everywhere." I rushed over to find her home in disarray. Drawers emptied onto floors, closets ransacked. "David's watch," she explained between ragged breaths. "The one his father gave him. I always kept it in my jewelry box, but it's gone." We searched for hours. I climbed into the attic while Sarah checked the garage again. When we finally found it, fallen behind her dresser, she collapsed onto the floor, clutching it, her body convulsing with relief and renewed grief. I sat beside her, not touching, just present, until the storm passed. "I thought I'd lost him again," she whispered. "Isn't that stupid? It's just a watch." "It's never just a watch," I said. That night, Sarah told me something she hadn't told anyone else. "Sometimes I'm angry at him," she confessed, "for leaving me, for dying." How terrible is that? I told her about throwing my wife's favorite mug against the wall 6 months after her funeral, how I'd screamed at her for abandoning me, then spent hours carefully gluing the pieces back together, apologizing to her ghost through tears. "Grief isn't linear," I said. "It's not even a circle, it's more like weather. Sometimes it's a drizzle you can function in, sometimes it's a hurricane that destroys everything. Sarah nodded. And sometimes the sun comes out for a moment, and you feel guilty for noticing. The first time we laughed together was over something ridiculous. I'd tried to fix my own plumbing and ended up soaking wet with a bathroom full of water. Sarah had come over with a pizza and found me sitting in the puddle, defeated. She'd started giggling, then apologizing, then laughing harder when I joined in. We laughed until we cried, and then we just cried because laughing felt like betrayal and relief all at once. 6 months after that first knock, Sarah got a job offer in another state. Her sister lived there and had been begging her to move closer since David died. She told me over coffee in my kitchen, her eyes fixed on the steam rising from her cup. "I think I need to go," she said. "This house, it's still his house. I'm still waiting for him to walk through the door." I understood, but selfishly I dreaded returning to my solitary existence. Sarah had become my tether to the world of the living. We'd started venturing out together, to the grocery store, to movies, once even to a community concert in the park. Small steps back into life. "When do you leave?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 3 weeks, she said. "Will you help me pack?" Those 3 weeks were a strange limbo. We sorted through her belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. The hardest were David's things. His clothes still hanging in the closet, his books on the shelves, his toothbrush I discovered she'd never thrown away. Each item required a decision, and each decision reopened wounds barely beginning to heal. "How did you do it?" she asked me one night as we sat surrounded by boxes. "How did you let go of Elena's things?" The truth was I hadn't. Not entirely. I still had a closet full of my wife's clothes I couldn't bear to donate. But I had managed to create space in my home that wasn't a shrine to her absence. "One piece at a time," I told Sarah. "And it's okay to keep some things. The watch, his favorite books, the things that bring comfort instead of pain." The day before Sarah left, we sat on her empty porch drinking wine from paper cups, because all her glasses were packed. The moving truck would come in the morning. The sunset painted the sky in colors so beautiful they hurt to look at. "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "What if I'm making a mistake?" "You can always come back," I said, "or go somewhere else, or stay there forever. There's no wrong choice when you're rebuilding your life." She turned to me then, her face serious. "Thank you for answering the door that night." "Thank you for knocking," I replied. We both knew what would have happened if she hadn't, how grief can become a room you live in, with the doors and windows closed, the air growing staler by the day. How easy it is to forget there's a world outside. The morning Sarah left, she handed me a small package. "Don't open it until later," she instructed, hugging me tightly before climbing into her car. I watched until her taillights disappeared around the corner, then went back to my empty house that somehow felt emptier than before. That evening I opened her gift. It was a small wind chime made of sea glass and copper. Attached was a note in her neat handwriting, for when the silence gets too heavy. "Remember, it's okay to make new sounds." I hung it on my porch that night. The gentle tinkling wasn't Elena's laugh or Sarah's voice, but it was something alive in the stillness, a reminder that even in absence, the world continues to move. 2 months later, I joined a grief support group at the community center. I told them about Sarah, about that first knock on my door, about how sometimes healing comes not from moving on, but from moving toward each other in our brokenness. 3 months after that, I volunteered to help renovate houses for families in need, using skills Elena had always encouraged me to develop. Sarah and I still talk, not every day, not even every week, but regularly. She's finding her way in her new city. I'm finding mine here. We share our small victories and occasional backslides. Last month she told me she'd gone on a date, just coffee, just an hour, with a kind man from her workplace. She cried afterward in her car, but they were complicated tears. "I think David would want me to try," she said over the phone, "but it feels impossible." "It is impossible," I told her. "Until suddenly, one day it isn't. I don't know if I'll ever reach that day myself. But I know now that grief isn't something to survive alone. Sometimes healing begins with a knock on a door in the middle of the night, with the courage to admit when silence becomes too heavy to bear alone." Yesterday, a new family moved into Sarah's old house. They have 2 young children who laugh as they run through the sprinkler in the front yard. This morning, I baked bread, Elena's recipe, and walked it over to welcome them. The mother thanked me with genuine warmth. The father asked if I might recommend a good local plumber. The little girl asked if I had any kids. No, I said, but I have stories. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. As I walked back to my house, the wind chime on my porch caught the breeze, sending gentle notes into the air. I stopped to listen, remembering Sarah's words, "It's okay to make new sounds." Perhaps that's what healing really is. Not the absence of grief, but the courage to create something new within its presence. A melody that honors what was lost while embracing what remains. A door that opens when someone knocks, even in the darkest hour of the night.